Princess Diana's death devastated her sons, Princes William and Harry, but it was especially traumatic for 12-year-old Harry, who still struggles to make sense of the tragic loss and its continued impact on his adult life. There's no easy way to tell a child one of their parents has died, and while King Charles III no doubt did his best to break the news gently, Prince Harry felt his delivery fell terribly short. In a 2023 60 Minutes interview, Harry said, 7:30 in the morning, early, your father comes in, sits on your bed, puts his hand on your knee and tells you there's been an accident. He went further in his memoir, Spare, writing, he says, they tried, darling boy, I'm afraid she didn't make it. These phrases remain in my mind like darts on a board. This was all confusing and harrowing enough, and obviously a lot to take in when you're still a child and barely awake or expecting a serious conversation. But what made it even worse for Prince Harry was his father's emotional distance as he shared the news. He described the moment in his memoir, writing, Pa didn't hug me. He wasn't great at showing emotions under normal circumstances, but his hand did fall once more on my knee and he said, it's going to be okay. But after that, nothing was okay for a long time. In movies, bad news is typically followed by tears, but for Prince Harry, the news of his mother's death was so sudden and unbelievable that his only reaction in the following days was emotional paralysis. As he told 60 Minutes, never shed a single tear at that point. I was in shock, you know? Princess Diana's death seems so unreal that sometimes he preferred to believe it hadn't actually happened. In his memoir, Harry admitted that he often wondered if his late mother would one day return, out of the blue. He even had a recurring dream about Diana re-emerging without warning, writing, she was always wearing a disguise, a big blonde wig or big black sunglasses, and yet I'd always recognise her. It wasn't until his mother's burial at Althorpe, her family's estate, that Prince Harry finally broke down. Speaking to 60 Minutes, he recalled, once my mother's coffin actually went into the ground, that was the first time that I actually cried. There was never another time. For Prince Harry, participating in public mourning rituals in the days that followed his mother's death was an arduous task. Not only was he trying to cope with his own personal loss, he was required to interact with thousands of grieving strangers. It was a lot to put on a 12-year-old, and while he looked outwardly composed during his public appearances, inside he was numb. He told Oprah in The Me You Can't See, it was like I was outside of my body and just walking along doing what was expected of me, showing 1/10 of the emotion that everybody else was showing, thinking, this is my mum, you never even met her. So profound was his shock and emotional paralysis that he felt nothing even as he shook hands with people who were openly weeping. This left him with a lasting sense of guilt. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Harry recalled, their hands were wet from wiping their own tears away. One of the strangest parts to it was taking flowers from people and then placing those flowers with the rest of them, as if I was some sort of middle person for their grief. The numbness Prince Harry experienced in the immediate aftermath of Princess Diana's death was an understandable response to an unthinkable tragedy. But as the immediate shock of her death receded, Prince Harry continued to bury his emotions. Even though others in the royal family tried to talk to Prince Harry and his brother Prince William about their mother's death, he didn't yet have the maturity to articulate his emotions.
Harry and I tried to talk as best we could about it, but being so small at that age, it's very difficult to communicate or understand your feelings.
Then there was the pressure from the royal family to keep a stiff upper lip and not let any personal trauma interfere with his official duties, something he'd been taught by his father from a very young age. As Harry remembered, my father used to say to me when I was younger, he used to say to both William and I, well, it was like that for me, so it's going to be like that for you. So rather than facing down his anger and sadness about his mother's death, he pushed it down and simply chose not to talk about it. Compounding Prince Harry's stress following the death of his mother was the fact that media attention, always a fact of life for the royal family, only grew more intense as the family and world mourned. Prince Harry found himself squarely in the eyes of the press and expected to deal with it without complaint.
As a parent, could I ask you to respect my children's space?
It was the royal family way, and they told him that if he buckled down and muddled through, life would eventually start to feel normal again. It didn't. Even before his mother's death, Harry felt traumatized by unwanted media attention. Paparazzi regularly tailed his mother's car, even when her young boys were riding in the back seat. He remembered wishing he could do something to stop their constant hounding of Diana.
Every single day until the day that she died.
And the fact that his mother's death was caused by her driver's attempt to evade yet more paparazzi only added to his hatred of the press. Royal expert Duncan Larkham told Town & Country, in Harry's mind, it was the press that killed his mother. I know that because he's told me that several times privately. As Prince Harry grew older, he realised that avoiding thoughts about his mother's death was only adding to his mental stress. So he decided to confront the reality of her death head-on in the hope of finding some closure. So, in 2007, while he was in Paris to watch the Rugby World Cup semi-finals, he made a surprising request of his driver to not only drive through the tunnel in which his mother died, but to do so at the same speed, 65 miles per hour, at which the fatal accident was reported to have happened. The quick trip through the tunnel proved anticlimactic. As Harry wrote in Spare, "We zipped ahead, went over the lip of the tunnel's entrance, the bump that supposedly sent Mummy's Mercedes veering off course, but the lip was nothing, we barely felt it. They drove through the tunnel a second time, but once again, nothing clicked. If anything, it only made him feel worse," as Harry admitted, writing, "I'd had plenty of bad ideas in my 23 years, but this one was uniquely ill-conceived." For many years after losing his mother, Prince Harry intentionally suppressed thoughts about her death, or even about Diana herself.
Our mum, she still is our mum. You know, and of course, as a son, I would say this, she's the best mum in the world.
The idea that she was never coming back was just too painful. Instead, he stuck to the royal family's tradition of dignified stoicism and tried to carry on as if nothing was amiss. But he could only keep up the act for so long. By his late 20s, Harry was at a breaking point and started experiencing panic attacks.
A suit and tie on and having to, do the role. And before I even left the house, I was pouring with sweat. My heart rate I was in the fight or flight mode.
He eventually turned to drugs and alcohol to make the overwhelming feelings more bearable. When children suffer through traumatic events, they usually turn to their parents for comfort and support. But for Prince Harry, the death of Princess Diana meant not only the loss of his mother, by far the more emotionally expressive and openly affectionate of his parents, but suffering through the aftermath with relatively little emotional support from his father, the future King Charles III, nor from many other members of the royal household. So Harry struggled in silence throughout his youth. By the time he was in his 20s, his brother Prince William suggested he reach out to professionals for help. Harry listened and began seeing therapists, doctors, and anyone else who might be able to help. Then, early in his relationship with Meghan Markle, he got even more serious about his mental health.
I knew that if I didn't do the therapy and fix myself, that I was going to lose this woman.
In fact, Harry has not only been open about seeking therapy, but even allowed one of his therapy sessions to be taped for the me you can't see. While their relationship has fractured in recent years, Prince Harry and his older brother Prince William were close during their youth, and their shared experience of losing their mother while being obliged to keep up appearances forged a unique bond between them. But perhaps because of a difference in emotional temperament, or maybe because he was older when the tragedy occurred, Prince William was better able to endure their shared trauma. Slowly, you try and rebuild your life, and you try and understand what's happened. And I kept saying to myself that, my mother would not want me to be upset. But the death of their mother made William and Harry aware of the importance of mental health and of processing their emotions. This inspired them, along with Catherine, Princess of Wales, to co-found Heads Together, a charity dedicated to promoting mental health awareness.
Challenge is great, but when we put our heads together, we can achieve great things.
The unofficial guiding principle for royal conduct has always been never complain, never explain. This meant maintaining one's dignity at all times, ignoring the haters, and keeping the public at a polite distance. And obviously, it meant never airing the family's dirty laundry. Indeed, until fairly recently, it was considered unthinkable for royals to reveal much about their private lives at all. Way back in 1867, author Walter Bagehot wrote in the English Constitution, "Above all things, our royalty is to be reverenced, and if you begin to poke about it, you cannot reverence it. Its mystery is its life. We must not let in daylight upon magic." But when Princess Diana married into the royal family in 1981, she was determined to live a more emotionally honest life than royals before her, giving several frank interviews in the 90s about her personal journey and experiences.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
And after spending his childhood and young adulthood struggling in silence, Prince Harry followed in his mother's footsteps. He now encourages others to face their own honestly and openly. As he explained to The Telegraph, "The experience I have had is that once you start talking about it, you realise that actually you're part of quite a big club." When something terrible happens within a family, most parents try to protect their children from the worst of it. They may reveal only the information they feel their children are old enough to understand. This was what then Prince Charles tried to do after Diana's death. He told Prince Harry, then only 12, that his mother had died in an accident and reassured him everything would be all right. But he refused to share any other details with his sons. Speaking with the Irish Mirror, royal expert Ingrid Seward explained, "No newspapers, no television, and sadly very little discussion about their late mother. Charles thought that was the right thing to do." But in Harry's mind, this was anything but the right call. For him, the silence only laid the groundwork for years of pent-up anger and mental distress. As the years went on, the prince didn't understand what had happened to his mother, whether her death was an accident or even an assassination, and for that, he blamed his father. If you or someone you know needs help with mental health, please contact the crisis text line by texting HOME to 741741. Call the National Alliance on Mental Illness helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI 6264 or visit the National Institute of Mental Health website.